Hi everyone, it's Mr. Smith again with the last walkthrough video, and this one is English Literature Paper 2, Modern Texts and Poetry. This is arguably the hardest paper of all four, as you've got 4 questions to answer in 2 hours and 15 minutes. You've got your Inspector Clause question to begin with, you've got your Power and Conflict Poetry question, which is a comparison. You've then got your Unseen Poetry question, number 1, and then the Unseen Comparison, which is your second question. So lots to do, lots of writing, and you need to be using all the minutes possible. The front of this booklet will look exactly this, very much similar to the paper 1. The only difference being that obviously it says 2 hours and 15 minutes and it's a different text. Everything else from the materials and the instructions is the same. In the information, there's just one more section, and this is section C, and this is your unseen poetry. Again, with this paper, the same as paper 1, it's incredibly important to remember that you will find other questions in this booklet that we have not studied. You may have seen them or read an extract from them in year 7, 8 or 9, but we haven't studied them. It would be a waste for you to not answer an Inspector Clause and the Power and Conflict Poetry question because we've studied them for 2 years and you're very good at them. So that's what we need to be thinking about. So looking at the contents page then, we can see straight away that an Inspector Clause question is on page 4. We've then got the Power and Conflict Poetry question here on page 20 to 21. And then the Unseen section starts at page 22 and runs to page 23 as well. Okay. So for an Inspector Clause, you get a choice of 2 questions. There's no extract for this question, just a choice of 2 questions. You do not need to answer, or should not answer, both questions. You are only answering one. If you answer both, then the examiner will mark both and you will get the highest score. But because you've had a lot less time to write it, it will not be as good as if you answer one question. So, I reiterate, you are answering one of the 2 questions. Okay. You've got the options here of how does Priestley present what life is like for women in Inspector Clause, and how does Priestley present the different ways older and younger characters respond to the inspector. In this section, you will receive either a character question or a theme question. Here, we've kind of got 2 theme questions to go at. You might find that there's 2 character questions, but usually they go with a character and a theme. My personal preference is to answer the theme question. I do feel like you can bring in more quotations and more of the analysis that you've learned over the past 2 years. You might feel that you know a character really well, in which case, absolutely fine. It is what you want to do on the day that matters and the most you can write about and give a really good solid argument to. Okay, you'd follow the same process as you did with Macbeth and A Christmas Carol. So instantly, I'd be thinking, what quotations do I know that are related to these questions? And I would be writing them down. I would then think about what keywords can I use that are related to these questions? And again, I would write them down. Finally, what writer's intentions are relevant for these 2 questions? You are following exactly the same structure as you did for Macbeth and A Christmas Carol. So you have your clear focus at the start of the answer. And this clear focus should say something like, Priestley deliberately depicts, take the first question here, Priestley deliberately depicts what life was like for women in Inspector Clause in order to. Then you would bring in your writer's intention. Again, once you've done that clear focus, that should form the basis of your answer. Every kind of paragraph afterwards should be related to that clear focus statement. You bring in your evidence. Now, this can be quotations, it can be stage directions, it can be references to the play. All of that is absolutely fine. And then you would analyse it and support your answer with potentially other quotations or other methods. Again, you would do clear focus, evidence, writer's methods, writer's intentions, and keywords. It doesn't necessarily have to be in that order. Clear focus obviously has to come first, but after that, it can be the essay should flow. It should flow with your answer and what you believe, how you believe this argument should be placed for each of these 2 questions. Again, to note, there are 4 marks available for SPAG, so give yourself 5 minutes at the end to reread through the questions and make sure that you've answered it thoroughly and also that you have done capital letters, full stops, punctuation where it needs to be, and not misspelled silly words like priestly, which is literally there for you. Okay, you should spend 45 minutes on this question before moving on. It's a 2 hour and 15-minute exam, but 45 minutes should be spent on your inspector course question before moving on to the next question, which is your poetry. And you'd have to scroll through the booklet. It's quite a big booklet, there's lots of questions in there to find the next question. Obviously, you wouldn't be scrolling, you'd be turning the pages, but you get the message. And then it would look like this. This one is the love and relationships. We don't know those poems. You might have seen them before, but again, we're not using them poems, so we're going to skip straight past that. And then you will find this contents page. The reason they put this in is this will remind you all of the poems that you've studied. So when you come to read the question in a second and look at the poem that you should be comparing to, this should jog your memory of some of the poems that you've studied and you can compare to. Okay, so the question says, compare how the poets present the effects of power in Milas Duchess and in one other poem from Power and Conflict. Firstly, I would be highlighting compare. Compare tells us that we need to be looking out for similarities and differences in this poem and one other, one that we know really well. The next bit of the question to identify or highlight is the effects of power. Okay, a fairly broad question. There's lots of poems that look at the effect of power, so that gives us a clue. Okay, before I read this poem, I will be thinking about which poem do I know really well that I can compare to. And on your answer sheet or wherever you want to, I would be starting to plan. Okay, which poem am I going to use? For this one, I would maybe think about checking out history, or you could do London, or you could do the Prelude, or you could do Tissue. There's loads on there you could do. I would pick one and I would write down 2 quotes and 1 structural feature that I know about that poem. 2 quotes and 1 structural feature. Obviously, you can do more. If you've got time to do more, fantastic. But 2 quotes and 1 structural feature to compare would be amazing. And then I would think about Milas Duchess. What do we know in here? What quotes have we looked at in detail in here? You don't need to read the whole poem again. That's not important. Just look for the quotes that you know you can talk about. And again, thinking about a structural feature. For this one, we could talk about the idea that it's a monologue, and then we can link that monologue idea to power, because it's showing that the Duke is, he believes he's powerful, and that's why he's just talking at the person, the messenger that's come to visit him. He believes that he should hold the conversation, etc. It will be different depending on the poem, but a structural idea would be good. You would then put that into 3 comparison paragraphs. So again, at the start, you'd have your clear focus. Now, this is going to look slightly different to the other 3 because it needs to include both poems. So both poets discuss the effects of power. Both poets in Milas Duchess and one other discuss the effects of power. However, in Milas Duchess, the effects of power are, and then you would put a comment, whereas in other poem, the effects of power are. Straight away, you've started off with a comparison. It's basic, but you've started off with a comparison. You are already on the front foot when it comes to comparing marks. Next, you would need to look at one of the quotes or one of the poems in detail. You can do it either way. Either look at one quote in detail from one of the poems, or one full poem in detail. So look at both quotes and the structural feature. It's up to you which way you do it. Then your second paragraph should be either a quote from the other poem or the full poem in detail using comparative language. So how are these things different? So on the other hand, differently, similarly, potentially, whatever that might be, but using comparative discourse markers again. Okay? Once you've done that and you've put those paragraphs together, have a think about writer's intentions. Can you bring your writer's intentions in here? What are the intentions of the writer of Milas Duchess? How do they differ in terms of power from the intentions of your other poem? And try to have a paragraph in there, or at least have those ideas in your argument about why the writers have done what they've done. The success criteria for this one is CO, comparison, E, which is your evidence, WM, which is your writer's methods, KW again, which is your keywords, and then finally your writer's intentions if you can fit them in. Once you've done that, and again, you should be spending 45 minutes on this question, You've been doing this exam now for an hour and a half. You've got to keep going because there is a good chunk of marks still to go. There's still 32 marks available on the paper. Okay, next then we get an unseen poem. Obviously on this example, it's been removed for copyright restrictions, but on the example that you have, there will be a poem here. It will say, in scaffolding, how does the poet present the speaker's feelings about their relationship? For unseen poetry, we would follow the rare process. So to begin with, we would read the question and underline the focus. So the focus of this question is the speaker's feelings about relationships. When we read the poem now, we know we're looking for feelings. Even if that poem makes no sense to us whatsoever, we will be able to pick out words or phrases that discuss feelings. Next, we would look at the title. Okay, what's the title of the poem? What connotations does that title have? What is it telling us? How is that title related to feelings? Next, you would look at the poem. And in the poem, you're looking for 3 pieces of evidence. Now, that can be one method, so a metaphor, a simile, a group of adjectives, adverbs. It should be a structural feature, so something structurally about the poem. And it should be something that's strange, something that stands out, something that doesn't quite fit with the poem. Once you've done that, you've then got a plan of 3 paragraphs. You've got your first paragraph, which is your method, then you've got your structural feature, then you've got your strange thing that doesn't stand out. Always relate back to the question. The question says the feelings about relationships. Relate back to it. Similarly to the language papers, we should be thinking about think, feel, and imagine here. You are the writer, you are the reader, should I say, sorry. You are responding to this poem. What does it make you feel about the speaker's feelings about their relationship? What does it make you think, feel, and imagine? Include that in your paragraphs, and you are on to a winner. The structure for this would be a clear focus at the beginning, evidence, writer's methods. Obviously, we can't do intentions for this because we don't have any background knowledge of the writer, but those 3 are what we're after: clear focus, evidence, writer's methods. Okay. You should spend half an hour on this question, and that should give you 15 minutes to answer the second part of the unseen question. This one, you need to compare the first poem with a second poem. Again, there will be a focus to this question. Underline or highlight that focus. For this one, it says, what are the similarities and or differences between methods the poet used to present these feelings? So again, we know it's about feelings. We're reading the question, we're looking for feelings. Then we look at the title. Can we compare the title? Is that similar or different to the other poem? Then we read the poem, and then we look for evidence. This time, we don't need to look for three different things. We're just looking for any methods that we know this one has used that the other one has used. So that could be adjectives, it could be verbs, it could be metaphors. And again, we would then put this into aim for 2 paragraphs. 2 paragraphs comparing the methods used. In both poems, the writers use methods to convey the different feelings. However, in poem 1, the writer uses adjectives, whereas in poem 2, the writer uses adjectives differently because similar structure to that. This question you should spend about 15 minutes on. It's only worth 8 marks, but it is incredibly important to have a go at it. Do not forget about it. 8 marks could be a huge difference to your grade. So it is a question that you cannot forget about. Okay, as always, all of your staff members know all of this stuff. Everyone in English is gunning for you. We all know you can absolutely smash it. And if you have any questions, you know where I am, you know where the rest of the team are. Come and find us and we will help. Well done, everyone. See you soon.